All right, so we're doing another episode of .NET at Microsoft, where me and Scoble are walking around figuring out how and where we're using the platform in our products. So today, Mr. Scoble, what's going on?
I don't know. Who are you?
I'm John Durant. I'm a program manager for Visual Studio Tools for Office.
Yeah.
Which is all about .NET programmability for Office.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were talking, they're not going to show us Office 12. He's scared of showing us Office 12.
Well, I mean, Office 12, you know, but yeah. I'm risk adverse.
It's pretty cool, but you're working on that team too, because we have a separate interview with the Outlook 12 team.
I'll let them do that. I'm risk adverse.
Cool, and we have another guest here.
Yeah, who are you?
I'm Svetlana Loksh, and I'm development lead on one of the teams also.
Excellent.
Visual Studio Tools for Office, and we're all about showing how Office is a real development platform.
Absolutely. We're using managed code,
Yes.
correct?
Exactly.
So, did you guys write your Visual Studio Tools for Office components, platform, in managed code?
We have a mixture of managed code and unmanaged. So there is probably about 50-50 combination.
50-50.
Because on one end we talk to Office, which is unmanaged, on another end we talk to Visual Studio, which is managed and unmanaged. So somewhere in the middle, definitely there are a lot of managed components, but we also have unmanaged pieces as well, so that our integration works easier and better with both ends.
Fantastic. Now, let's say that I'm an unmanaged developer, can I take advantage of Visual Studio Tools for Office so I don't have to write managed code? Can I write C++ and take advantage of what you guys are doing?
Not our tools.
Not your tools?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we focus on two languages essentially. We
Uh-huh.
focus on Visual Basic .NET and Visual C#. So those are the two languages that we target.
Excellent.
Yep.
So what are some examples of what we can do with VSTO?
So one of the biggest thing I think with VSTO and Outlook is that you can now really develop your Outlook solutions and use real debugger, use really very stable environment, you end up having add-ins that you know how they will behave, won't have security issues, won't interact with each other in a way that you don't expect and can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
There's really a lot of stability. We put a lot of effort into creating solid infrastructure
Fantastic.
for our developers.
And so I can write an add-in for Outlook in my favorite, in VB or C#. Why couldn't I use any other language? Why just those two? I mean, what's the language dependency as opposed to just the framework dependency?
I don't know what all the implications are. I mean, I would say that just as you add more languages, the amount of work that has to go into the product, increases. The testing matrix goes up. I mean, there are a lot of implications. It sounds simple enough, .NET's language agnostic, so to speak. So why not any language?
Sure.
The thing of it is, though, we're creating tools that that work with these languages, or a customized set of tools in there, and so it would just increase the amount of work.
Yeah.
So we feel like we can focus on those two languages, which are the primary development languages, and deliver more tools.
Yeah.
Whereas if we spread it across more languages, we would have to reduce the number of tools we provided.
Understood.
Yeah. What's really cool is if you go on MSDN, we put out just a boatload of samples. And I think that's one of the things. I even look at how many samples we delivered for the previous version of our product, which was Visual Studio 2003, Tools for Office. If you look at the number of articles and samples, which was already prodigious, we have more now. So when you say what kind of things can you build, I mean, we already have lots of code samples out there, so you can do all the downloads and run this stuff. Yeah. And they're actually done with some concept in mind that these would be usable inside of a business. For example, we did a business contact manager add-in with our tools. We did a blogging tool with our tools, which simple enough, but it works. We did a reporting tasks add-in. So we actually have just a lot of. Those are just three of a good number. And then what's also cool is that with the Outlook add-ins, you can then tie these to Word and Excel customizations. And so we think that good share of the developers out there are going to want to pull all of these things together. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the most interesting add-in you've seen built so far by the community?
We have a customer that created a really cool one around recruiting people. And I thought that one was impressive. They put a lot of time into the polish and so on. And so that one, they actually came here and demoed it for us and showed us what they had done. It's pretty cool. I've seen some other good stuff being done through our Microsoft consulting services as they've gone into some companies and done work.
Yeah.
And I'm just don't know which companies I can mention and which ones I can't.
Probably
so
best not to mention any.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm
Cool.
sort of hesitating.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Well, that saves us editing time.
Yep.
Another good really application was the sales, how you manage sales through Outlook. So that was another really good example.
Right.
And for the first example that John mentions, when it was a recruiting company, I think the really exciting part about it was that we just released one of our very first releases of Outlook, and they said, guys, it's just unbelievable how fast we could build this product. We previously thought we cannot do that. We thought it's just too complicated. Environment is really not supporting us, and we as developers just suffering. But it was amazing how fast we could build this solution. So that
Fantastic. Another win for managed code.
Yep.
Since you're one of the few teams that build stuff using both managed and unmanaged, what kinds of problems or tips or things would you recommend that other developers outside of Microsoft who may be having to move a project from C++ into the .NET world? You know, are there things you learned that you might have surprised you before you started? Or?
So there are definitely things that it's a learning curve, and it's not a very easy learning curve how you combine these two. There's a lot of control that you need to learn about, so it's something that requires a lot of knowledge in COM and how you can use it for a managed world. So these are the things that are really, you'll have to know as you work through problems of managed on one end and unmanaged on another end.
Sure.
So it's just...
Well, I mean, the other
level
thing is, since we're in the managed world now, people are forgetting that C++ is also evolving, right? So if people have a big C++ project, they can slowly get into the managed world by taking advantage of some of the great stuff that's being done in VC plus 2005, blah, blah, blah. Interesting. That was an interesting question, though. But, I mean, C++ is not dying because managed code is here.
No, I just wondered if they learned stuff by stepping into the managed world that might not have been expected before you started, or that you have scars on your back that you can tell other developers, don't step here because that'll hurt you.
Well, I mean, but that brings up another question. I mean, let's talk about that. You spend clearly much of your career probably writing on managed code, and you're still writing half time on managed. What is it that you really like about writing, say, whatever flavor of managed code you're writing? Like, what's your favorite thing about when you get to launch Visual Studio and start doing something in C#?
Oh, it's simple. It's very intuitive.
It's simple and intuitive.
It's very intuitive. It's like supporting IntelliSense is really great, and there's really a lot of services, I guess, that are available to developers versus a managed code when you have really a lot of power, but you really need to know
what you're doing.
What are you doing? It's really easy to put rope around you.
You got it.
I like the way it's organized. You know, I remember when I was studying for one of the certification exams, and they had the MFC. You know, all the questions are on MFC, and it's like, wow, you know, how do you make sense? How do you like get your mind around all of that?
You buy Petzel's big thick book. And
yeah, you know, it's just like, whoa. But I find that with the .NET framework, I like the way it's organized. One of the things, as you were talking, Charles, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, it might be interesting for people watching the video, is what I think people outside of Microsoft don't always know is that not only do you need to make sure that people outside the company know about your product and how cool it is and what they can do with it, but you also end up spending a good share of your time, at least a measurable time, evangelizing your product within the company.
Yeah.
Because we have enough initiatives going on inside of the company that are built using C++, that are built in the COM world, and then we're going there and saying, well, if you were to base your product using our tools, you could actually come to market faster. And so this company is big enough, and there are enough places that's another thing that we end up doing. So we end up having these same kinds of conversations with our own internal teams and saying, if you go to .NET and take this as a dependency, you know, here's how much faster you'll be able to build this. These are the tools. This is the platform. And so I just think that's something that people don't always think of outside. Is like, oh, everybody in Microsoft, everybody's on .NET. Everybody's using it, you know, hands down.
Yeah.
Everybody understands its value. Everybody's behind it.
Sure.
But not every code base has been, you know, moved over. So
And that's an excellent point. And you know, not every code base needs to be moved over to managed code, right? I mean, it's an excellent point. It's a great tool, and we're 100% behind it in the company. The Visual C++ team spends tons of cycles in there, even the compiler people, tuning for MSIL, and they're really taking managed code seriously. So you're right. Everyone around the company takes it seriously. And the reason we're doing this is we want to know who's actually building products with it.
Yeah.
Clearly, a lot of people are. And slowly but surely we'll see more and more.
And also hear why other teams haven't moved, and that's an interesting story too. Because
sure.
Why rewrite if it works? If it works, wrap it up, leave it there. And then build all your new stuff. Like I think that's probably what you guys are doing, right? Some parts are, why move stuff that works? Work on the new stuff that's going to add functionality and value to the customers, right?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Correct.
One of the things that's really encouraging is, and we're seeing this in our MSDN forums, is I had this hunch that when our product, because I think this particular version, we really came out of the gate with a lot of really good stuff for developers, a lot of goodness for developers. And I had this sense that we would get people coming to the platform and trying out Office development who haven't really tried it before. We're sure to get the crowd that have done Office development. They're going to see this. It'll be almost self-evident to them. This is faster. This is better. I love the rad tools. But I think that we would get some. I was hoping, and certainly we are hoping, that we get some of the people, pull people in who haven't done Office development before. And that's evidence in our forums. We're seeing people using our product who are now building solutions for Word, for Excel, for Outlook. They've never done a thing before. Consequently, there is at least a measurable amount of our questions in the forums have nothing to do with our tools. They are about, how do I do this in Excel? What's the object I need in Outlook to do this? How does Word handle this? Is there a collection for that? Well, there are a lot of those kinds of questions that we're fielding and pointing people in the right direction, but it's an encouraging sign. What that means is these are people who are saying, yeah, I want to give Office a try. And
excellent.
But there is some complexity that comes to that equation that we can talk about sometime.
So now, one of the things that's been really interesting to me, because VSTO has been sort of the golden child as far as making the promise of Office as a platform really come to fruition, right? Because you have a beautiful programming model now.
Yep.
What was it like working with such a giant product in a completely unmanaged product? What was that experience like as a little small renegade team building, the platform for managed developers for Office, so what was that experience like?
So this team has really a long history of working with Office because VBA development came out of this team as well.
Okay.
So we have a long-lasting history of working with Office, talking to them, working out our interfaces, working out how we interact. So it's just this type of relationship that developed during the years that we worked on, starting with VBA and then on our version 1 and then on our version 2. I wouldn't say that the road was really, really smooth. It was bumpy, but I think we came more and more to a mutual understanding of what our goals, what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to help our developers, and not just developers. When we look at that, we are in two different divisions. So initially we had a really different outlook on things, but as we work closer and closer together, we definitely come to mutual goals and we plan together. And now I think is really a point that everybody is seeing that because we have meetings together, we have all our decisions made together, and it's just really joy to see it. I am the one who, probably one of the older people on the team, I shouldn't say old, hope you cut it.
No. Well, one of the more senior people.
I'm on this team. I started on this team in Microsoft, and so I'm going back many years, and seeing this change is really, really exciting for me. Because initially we were working, VBA was one end, Office was another end. We had interaction, but it wasn't that much. But now I see that we work, even though in different divisions, we work together, and it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, excellent. Now, what are the? Sorry to interrupt, Bill, but I'm curious. What are the your what's the right way to say this? Not playing field, but the spectrum of developers who are considered Office developers, the IT pro style developer, VBA, scripting, a little bit of comm when you have to do the hardcore stuff. How are they taking to this? Like, what's the feedback? Like, are people loving this or what?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to continue the conversation that John had about forums, and not just in forums. Every time we interact with customers, a lot of times we hear questions. Why do you do just Excel and Word? Why do you do just and Outlook? We do want to go and be able to write solutions against PowerPoint, against Access, and there's all these 10 applications, VSTO in Office, and when are you going to provide us with capabilities to build solutions against these applications?
Sure.
So it's absolutely an indication that people are really excited about the tools.
We're not going to let you go home on weekends anymore.
Like, why do you guys come do just all in one release?
I think one of the best compliments you can get from a customer is when they come to you and say, I've created these applications using your tools, and this is what I want in your next release.
Yeah.
This is where I think you guys dropped the ball. You need to do this. You need to fix this. You need to add this. Okay,
Cool.
That's good feedback. I mean, that to me is the ultimate compliment, because that says I've pushed, it's sort of like a car. I've driven this car so hard around corners and so on. I can tell you, that it's going to break down at 90 miles per hour on this curve. It starts to slide. That's good feedback.
Yeah.
If someone's just loafing around the parking lot, they're never going to tell me much about how this car performs. So I think, and we're getting that when we go to shows, go to conferences or whatever. That's continually what I'm getting from people. This is what I want in the next version.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's as good as you could ever ask, I think.
Yeah, since I've tried to build a few apps in your tool, the object model is a little bit bizarre, right? It's not like the object model you deal with on
Like
Gen
which
9.
object model?
Well, like for Excel, right? Because you have to learn how Excel works,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so Excel works completely different than working
Yes.
with SQL Server, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you find people have a trouble getting into that, or that you're having to change like how your APIs work so that people can sort of, programmers can identify more with the object model?
So we definitely do a lot of things for developers, especially for Excel and Word, in the sense that we provide, on top of object model that Office has, we provide additional objects that make your life much, much easier. So we have so-called host controls, for instance, like list object, which we turn into a real object, .NET type of object with events, with
Excellent.
data binding, and it's really becomes natural to code, let's say against list object or against bookmark, because you refer to this object like as a top level, top class object in object model. If you were to go, let's say in VBA, you would have to struggle through all the hierarchy of objects until you get, let's say, to a cell.
Yeah, good
now
example.
you can have like named range.
Exactly, that's a good
call
example.
it, let's say, customer, and in your code you just type customer.name and you're done.
That's fantastic.
So we definitely made a lot of effort to make development really rad.
Now that's actually a significant improvement from 1.0 to where we
Yes.
are today in 2005. Because in 1.0 you were kind of still closer to the metal as far as interacting with Office. So you still had to do my cell dot blah 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 blah. And now they're real objects, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
We shortcut a lot of the
Great.
We shortcut a lot of the coding that you would have to do, but so Robert, you just you brought it back to. I talked about how our forums, some of the questions, and in fact, not the majority, but certainly a good measure of them are people asking, how do I do this in Excel? How do I do this in Word?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the struggle. It's like we don't control those.
Well,
APIs.
Excel is an app that's unlike any other, anyways.
Yep.
I mean, when you really start just as a user of Excel, cutting and pasting behaves different there than it does on any other app I've ever used.
Yeah.
And so, as a programmer who's maybe coming in from like building business apps in Visual Basic or something, and then you're having to learn how Excel works, it's daunting sometimes, especially if you're trying to learn .NET at the same time, and because maybe you were a VB6 programmer, now you're learning VB.NET and you're learning how to build something for Office, and it's like
One of the things that's actually a little treat I'll plug here, because it's actually one of the best little treasures that we have. We created when in our last version, the Office UA team that does developer documentation commissioned a set of samples for Word and Excel, and these were written actually by Ken Getz, and Ken Getz, and everybody knows Ken Getz, so him
everybody knows
and
Ken
some
Getz,
other folks,
at least
and
in the Office world.
Basically what we did was we hired him to write a bunch of samples for Word and Excel and for the Office core stuff, and we put those out on got.net. So actually they're there, and and it comes in a nice shell framework. So actually, that one there, you can get a jump start on a lot of the API awkwardness by looking at the samples, and they're all .NET based.
Cool.
And they weren't conversions of old VBA samples over. They were rewrites from the ground up.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the little gems that most people don't know about, is that stuff sitting out there.
Probably the reason you have no hair is because of the VBA to VB.
Yeah, that's what it is. No, it's
I was an MVP in that world, and
it's 'cause I have 5
the
kids.
MVPs were all, what do you mean you're going to .NET?
That's much better.
It's because I have 5 sons. That's what did it to
Mamma
me.
mia. So and the other thing, though, to mention, because they've developed, this is running inside of the IDE. As a .NET developer, you learn that you can learn an entire API by using dropdown autocomplete.
Yeah, you really can.
Right, and so if you guys would probably have done the work in your POs and whatnot to comment, right? So you'll go, oh yeah, I'll use this API. Oh, it does this. So obviously,
I know all this because I hang out in the forums and I see how people, and it's like Excel is its own little thing. You know?
Totally, that's cool. Well, that's great.
I mean, and it's different than Outlook, right?
So let's
selecting things.
Let's talk about another important thing here, and that's security, right? Obviously, so when I go to someone sends me an email and it has this binary attachment to it, it's going to run, or I open a Word document and I've created a binary attachment, a .NET, which ends up being binary, but you understand what I mean. So there's this DLL that comes down with it, and there has to be some way for me to trust it.
Absolutely.
And so clearly, what you guys are doing is you're preventing the author of these things to delete my hard drive or install some sort of rootkit, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So what we do, like for example, excellent example with Outlook, if some evil person wants to send you some mail with attachment, you are safe, because if you just try to run this document with this bad customization of your Outlook, by default this customization won't run. We don't trust the temporary Outlook temporary folders of Outlook. Cool. We do require special steps to be done by be it administrator or user to make sure that your document runs from the trusted location and your customization in trusted location as well. So we use .NET security policy to make sure that you are secure, that your machine is really in good shape.
Cool. Because I remember talking to people in the 2003 range. That was one of those really, really sore points with VSTO, was the steps you had to take to secure your stuff. And so have you made it much better in 2005, or is it still?
So in 2005, it's the very same security model.
Okay.
But we are definitely looking at how to improve it. We did get a lot of even more feedback that this is a really painful point. It's really hard for people to figure out what exactly all the things that they need to do.
Sure.
We are trying to be actually more secure than pretty much anything else.
Well, that's wonderful.
Well, one of the things, so I agree, it is a pain point. We're not introducing any new security issues that don't exist for .NET on its own. I mean, we're following in step with how .NET provides security and make sure that anything that runs is secure. It gets interesting because I'm just a user. I've got this document. I don't know that there is a .NET customization running behind it. That's where really the complexity comes in. Is just that we're making these .NET assemblies really easy for users to need, is I guess how I would phrase it. One of the things that we have done, however, is we put out a really good white paper, actually done by Darren Lavery, one of our PMs here. He's a peer of mine and a great guy, and a really good UK accent. But he put together, I think, one of the best white papers. It's worth its weight in gold, and that's on MSDN, and it's how to create a Windows installer. So that basically, if you're an ISV and you're creating a VSTO customization, what are the things that you would do to make it really easy so users don't have to worry about, that whole world. And so that's out there, and we're getting really good response. I just spoke to a bunch of ISVs from Holland about a week and a half ago, and they were doing some really neat stuff with our tools, and they were super excited to see that we have this guidance out there. So, I've plugged MSDN, but I do it actually with good reason. I think I'm justified in promoting our stuff because we've taken a huge leap forward in providing guidance. Before I don't think we provided enough guidance. I don't think we necessarily needed to alter the product dramatically as much as we needed to provide more guidance.
And I know that, for example, Michael Lehman on our team is working on an interesting project. But can we talk about this?
I don't know.
All right.
No.
So forget it. Probably won't. But anyway, but building guidance
into
into
take over the world.
Yeah, it's gonna Microsoft everywhere. No, but the idea is building the guidance into the IDE experience for the developer. Because as a developer, typically, I mean, everybody knows this. Even Scoble probably knows this.
Maybe.
When you launch, when you're spending your time in Visual Studio. Even Scoble.
I can't believe you take this stuff.
I do all the time.
Your experience in the IDE tend not to like to leave the IDE, right? Because especially using .NET and the great stuff in VS, right? You have code complete, you can see what the APIs do, blah blah blah, and so it would be nice to have that guidance built into the IDE experience for me. So let's do the security steps for your cool Office application admin, your cool Outlook admin. Now here's how it's going to work step by step, and let's take you through the guidance. And I don't have to go to MSDN, which is a wonderful experience, great place. But not a lot of developers like to read white papers. I think PMs probably like to read them more than developers. Just playing. Or write them.
No.
So,
that is not true.
I mean, that would be cool to build a little more guidance into the IDE and future versions.
Definitely.
Right.
And software factories, that's what Michael's working on. It's known. It's not anything to hide. All right, cool. Question? So why did I say even Scoble? Well, Scoble's not a developer. That's why.
Yeah, he's.
All right.
He
I've
knows
only
more
written
than he
Hello
lets on.
World. I've written Hello World in 4
knows
different
more than he
by copying Don Box. He taught me how to do Hello World.
So what's on the future radar for what you guys are working on? Like what are you working on now that we can talk about?
Yep. Well, I mean, it's no secret that Office 2007 is going to release, and in the not so distant future.
Mm-hmm.
And so we obviously want to look at our tools in terms of, because we're the Office Platform Developer Tools team. We want to look at what are the things that are happening in Office 2007 that we want to really make that programmability. We want to grease the skids for developers. And so we're looking right now. We're in a lot of the planning stages. Like we're looking across the board at all the features. We're looking at Outlook. There's really neat stuff happening in Outlook. There's the UI change, the ribbon. There's the XML file format. So all of those things are things we look at and say, are these investments we want to make? Do we, And so ultimately, it's going to be the customer's call that really guides a lot of that decision. If we think a lot of customers are going to be very interested in this programmability piece here, we think that we can create tools around that will add a lot more value, that will increase Office 2007 adoption and so on. Those are things that we will, tackle. So we're really just in a lot of the thinking phase, gathering feedback from customers. It's a good time to be right now because you're not under any really crushing deadlines right now. So this is like we're smiling. Talk to us in a year.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. The Office team showed me the new ribbon extensibility model. So.
Exactly. So those are all things that we,
Now, is that part of your team?
That's the Office team.
That's the Office team
Yep.
stuff.
The extensibility model, how it works. They have XML. Basically, you feed it an XML file with all your declarations of all the buttons and everything, and feed that to Office. That's there. So that's the interesting thing is, and Svetlana was talking about in the past, there wasn't as much communication, whereas now, as they plan features, we're in the room talking about what can we do for the tool story.
I would say that we plan our features and how they should be exposed, like programmability together. There's a lot of input from Office, there's a lot of input from our team. So as we think about how we expose ribbon, or how we talk about how do we expose other critical pieces of new functionality in Office, it happens together. There's a lot of architects on our side, architects on their side, working together. We have a lot of smart people working on that.
Yeah. Why did the team get built over here in DevDev and not over on the Office side? Because you guys are like a mile apart, right?
We're developer tools, so the entire division is all about development.
Yeah.
So, and we are shipping with Visual Studio. We are on Visual Studio train, so we definitely have to be really close. We have to be close in both ends, but since we're developer tools, we need to be close to all the services like language services, compilers, and we're in the same shell.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have to be together.
Yeah, if you look at Office, I mean, I look at some of the features that are going to be released in 2007, and there's really the end user story is brilliant.
Yeah.
And the programmability hooks are all there. But that division is not really staffed or really tasked with creating developer tools. That's never really been their direct charter. They're not a developer tools division. They're all about making the end user experience just what customers want and making the programmability platform available. And that's where we come in. We think that, and so she said that, there are people on this team from a long time ago. I mean, back in the old mod days, Microsoft Office developer, there was people on the team. Were you in mod too?
No,
so there are people back from mod from those days. My managers used to be working on mod. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a legacy here too. So a lot of rich knowledge.
Excellent.
Cool. Anything else that you want to do? You don't have any demos or anything, do you?
I didn't plan on showing any.
Yeah, that's cool.
I can spin some up, but we could do.
We've seen them before. Catherine Heller has done some VSTO demos with us, so we'll link over to her video. So if anybody cares about what it is that your team does, she does a good demo. So.
She's really good at the evangelism too, so she'd be really good for that.
Yeah.
Point our samples. We have lots of great samples. Going back to John's point, there's a lot of samples that were done by MVPs. There were also a lot of samples that were done by people on this team. They spent a lot. We had an entire team devoted to samples, which is something uncommon for developer division in general. So we spend a lot of time talking to customers, determining what are the scenarios, writing really samples, showing what are the things you can do, and what are the things that are really straightforward, but also knowing that there are some areas that are harder to attack. So we walked our customers in these samples through the workarounds and how do you deal with that scenario, how do you deal with that other scenario. So we have really good bank of samples.
Why do you think developers don't look at Outlook as a set of DLLs that they can use? The way that they look at .NET or the .NET frame, they don't look at it as a mainstream development platform. I guess is it because there wasn't enough of them out there, or was it that there wasn't a consistent base out there?
I think developers do look at it. Just development of Outlook was so hard and so. It wasn't very simple. People were spending a lot of time trying to go through solve the problems that are really not easy problems to solve.
Totally.
And it was just that I think the primary
it's a
reason
secret
there
science.
are so many scenarios people want to implement using Outlook. It's just the main thing that people use. Everybody's familiar with Outlook. Everybody knows.
All day long.
Yeah, all day long. How do you deal with contacts? How do you deal with tasks? What do you do with mail? And it's so natural for a lot of applications to be used. And Outlook is a front end that actually there's a lot of scenarios people want to build with Outlook. It's just really
there are a ton
hard.
of developers. Before I worked here, I've been here 3 years at Microsoft. And before I worked here, I was an independent consultant, and I can't think of very many projects I did that didn't involve Outlook development. But it is its own secret science. I mean, there is a community of Outlook developers, very vibrant, passionate, dedicated. And I actually got to know Randy Byrne, who's a PM over in Outlook for programmability. I got to know him before he worked here. He and I crossed paths. Mainly, I was asking him questions. We did see, and Randy can attest, we saw it as a platform, but the problem was it was very challenging. So when we created these tools, what we've offered in a way for Outlook, in a way, is actually strikingly simple. We're saying that you can create this add-in and that it debugs and that the runtime is solid, but that alone, I nearly wept when I had our first working version because I know how hard it is. And I actually, I wrote an article and I copied from the news groups statements by people who said, I've done everything that is on MSDN for getting this COM add-in to run. I followed every step. It's taken me 3 days and it still doesn't run.
And Outlook doesn't shut down.
Yeah, Outlook doesn't shut down.
Oh, yes.
Outlook doesn't ever load the add-in.
Famous shutdown.
And the fact that we've created an environment where all you do is create your add-in and you hit F5 and Outlook loads and your breakpoint gets hit is enough to make any serious Outlook developer weep. Just the simplicity.
That's the key line right there.
It's enough. It's enough, and they responded super well to that. They were like, "This is great."
Excellent.
Well, thank you.
Actually, one of the reasons that, because initially for version 2 in our plans we had only Excel and Word, And we were happily moving along, doing our Excel and Word development, building tools for these two applications. But we heard such an outcry from customers that we have to have support for Outlook.
Yeah.
That we, in the middle, I would say actually past the middle point, started working on Outlook, and we decided we have to add it. Otherwise, people just won't accept the product. They will see it as a not full offering for customers, not compelling enough. So we had to add Outlook.
And you're looking at two of the people that were thrown into that whirlwind project.
Nice.
You know, brought into the middle of our product cycle, and Svetlana and I our minds were spinning.
Yeah, we had a great team of people.
It was great. Yeah, and everybody on the team really pulled together, and that was fun too, because people did whatever it took. It wasn't so much, this is all I do and this is all I'm going to do. It was really just a team effort, and we pulled it off, and the customer is happy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well,
and have you seen any? I mean, the cool thing about being based on managed code using the framework is that you can do some really incredible stuff with WinFX.
Yes.
Right. It's like really awesome Avalon UI inside of Outlook or inside of Word, and WCF also. You can have a peer-to-peer application inside Word. Create a network with your friends reading the same document, that kind of stuff. That's going to happen. Have you seen? That'll be some good demos. And Vista, WinFX is there, so there's no more deployment argument because you got it. So
definitely,
I hope to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, it'll. Obviously we're looking not only at all the improvements that are being made in Office, but we're also looking at all the advances that are made in the underlying platform here in .NET. So we're looking at it all, figuring out what's actually going to get built, and then we have a new whirlwind project to do.
Yeah. So you guys are in the middle of planning for Orcus?
Yep, we're doing the planning for Orcus and driving towards some real start dates of when so there's some prototyping and other things going on.
What kind of feedback do you want to hear about from the community at this point for Orcus planning?
Really, it would be helpful, I think, at this stage to know more about what kind of scenarios. I think we could always use specifics too and really detailed things, but I think ultimately what's definite gold here at Microsoft is knowing what are the scenarios that customers are dealing with, what kind of problems are developers trying to solve. That is worth its weight in gold. It's one of the reasons why it's so exciting when you hire somebody new into the company who's been a consultant and they've written real world solutions. It's like, oh, you have this window into what customers do. We want to know. We want to tap into that. And so we now, with blogging and Channel 9 and a lot of these other things, we now have lots of hooks going back the other way into the community and knowing their scenarios. This is the kind of world we work in. That's really, really helpful. What do you say, Svetlana?
Knowing their pain points as well. I'm sure that V2 is great, but I'm sure there's a lot of places that we can improve.
Yep.
So that would be another really, really good input for us to see where people are struggling and to help them with that, because definitely our ultimate goal is to make our customers happy and to deliver the best we can, and without knowing where the main struggles are, we won't be able to do that. So we definitely need support from customers.
Are you guys looking at how web development is changing the development pool of programmers out there, that they're using web services and REST and building web pages that are pulling things out of services like Google stuff and Yahoo stuff and Microsoft
Live
stuff and throwing it back out on a page? Do you think your team is going to be affected by that wave of development methodology?
It's one of the areas that definitely we should be looking at as well. But primary focus, I would say, at this point is really we're trying to focus around Office 12 scenarios. So how it plays in Office 12, that's how we'll try to leverage it and show the best of these scenarios in VSTO.
But today I could write, using your tools, I could easily write a plugin for Outlook that queries a web service.
Definitely.
And returns
Our
data.
samples do it.
Totally.
That's what our samples have.
Our project is now different from any other Visual Studio
You
project.
got it. You have the whole framework at you got it all.
Yep.
That's what's amazing about that. It's not. See, that's the thing. It's not just the Office platform. You're not stuck just with the Office API, which is great.
Yep.
But you got the whole world.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, it's
So,
the best of it's the
it
best
is
great
of Visual
stuff.
Studio and best of Office.
I'm glad you get it, because that is what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's like for all of the extra work that goes into managing, sort of bridging the Office to .NET world, and you called us a small renegade team, and in a way, I think it's partially true. You know, we step into that watershed that opens up between Office and the .NET world, and we position ourselves there, and we're starting to gain pretty comfortable posture in that environment. But what we're saying is, you're inside of Office, you want to connect up to web services, great. You want to connect up to, you know, to databases and do all the data binding and all of that crazy stuff, great. You know, that's what it's about.
Excellent. Well, this is great. This is exciting.
Hey, you guys are fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
thanks.
Well,
Thanks for
your
spending some
time.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great
times.
job, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.